The Toy Story franchise is one in which I hold near and dear to me. I loved the movies when I was younger, and I've only grown to appreciate their genius as I've gotten older. They are perfect family movies that anyone can watch and get some amount of enjoyment out of. However, the franchise's main claim to fame is that it was a perfect trilogy, up there with movies like Back to the Future and The Dark Knight. Each movie got objectively better than the last one, and the ending of the third one brought a satisfying conclusion to the series and left no stone unturned, meaning there was no reason to make any more movies. That wasn't until Pixar's industrial-sized wallet wasn't quite full, so they fired up their moneymaker to roll in the revenue like Scrooge McDuck. In 2019, Toy Story 4 released to universal acclaim and grossed just a little over $1 billion at the box office. So you may think, since it made a lot of money and people really liked it, its existence must be warranted, right? No. The movie actively goes back on things that have been established since the first Toy Story, further making its inclusion in the series more baffling. As mentioned previously, I like Toy Story. They are some of the funniest and heartwarming movies you'll ever find, and to see it be milked for an entry that could have been skipped stung a little. I recall the hype for Toy Story 4 to be immense, and I remember following the film until its release by watching the different trailers that would come out. I even memorised the first proper trailer to a T, so that's how you knew I meant business. School was coming to a close when it was released, and everyone in my class was talking about how they had seen it, and my anticipation shot through the roof. I couldn't wait to watch it. It's probably the most ecstatic I've ever been for a movie. I went and saw it with my family, and I thought it was great. Then I watched it again 2 weeks later and despised it. What? It became one of my most hated movies ever, as it left a nasty stain on the brilliance of the original series. I would always leave it out on rewatches of the other movies, and you wouldn't catch me dead watching it by itself. A lot of critiques have brewed up in my brain over the past 5 years, and I believe it's only fair to give this movie another shot through a non-biased lens and see how well it actually holds up, and see if my prepubescent self was right, or if this movie is a scum of the earth that I would have myself believe. In order to get into what works and what doesn't, the story must be explained first. Following the events of Toy Story 3, Woody finds himself no longer being played with that much by Bonnie, and thus feels neglected. Once Bonnie makes Forky in kindergarten, Woody takes it upon himself to teach Forky the ways of being a toy. However, disaster strikes whenever Forky decides he doesn't want to be a toy, jumps out of the caravan the gang were travelling in, and it's now up to Woody to bring Forky home safely so Bonnie can make it through school. Along the way, he meets Bo Peep and a wide array of other toys, teaching Woody there's more to life than sitting in a kid's room, and how the world is waiting to be explored. This story would be fine if you don't know who Woody is. Woody isn't the kind of toy that just abandons his owner, and the only way the movie can justify this is by having Bonnie grow a distaste towards Woody, which doesn't make sense in the context of Toy Story 3. Bonnie wasn't even supposed to have Woody, but Andy gave him to her in the promise that she would take good care of him, yet she turns her nose up at the thought of even playing with him. As mentioned previously, the movie introduces new characters for Woody to mingle with, but I can't find myself caring for any of them all too much. One of the movie's marketing points was the return of Bo Peep, character from the original duology. I'm not sure why they placed such important emphasis on her return, I believe she was really not that important of a character to begin with. I understand that there was some romantic tension between the two, and seeing her again warrants at least a niche from anyone, but she might as well just be a completely different character. She's presented as this badass female who went through the lows of being passed down by many different owners, and now she's a lost toy who wants to see the world, which is what nudges Woody in the direction of becoming a lost toy as well. And this only makes sense because Woody feels neglected by Bonnie, which, as we've gone over, makes no fucking sense. In addition, why would Woody even want to be a lost toy? He's shown to really hate the idea, again referring to Toy Story 1, and even when he first meets Bo.
Oh, the lost toy.
So which one is yours? None.
No one. Wait, you're a lost toy?
That's
awful.
Great, huh?
I mean, awfully great that you are lost.
The other new characters aren't any better, because they just aren't interesting. Forky, I'm convinced, was only made to be a marketing gimmick. He's alright at the start, but plays a much bigger role than he deserves. He's basically the equivalent of dangling keys in front of a toddler to keep them occupied, except instead of keys, it's a bad running gag. Speaking of which, Buzz couldn't be saved from the mediocrity. Like with Forky, he has this lame running gag that is slightly funny at the start, but it gets completely overplayed. Buzz is back to being an idiot and misunderstands your inner voice as his literal voice backs. Oopsies, isn't that funny, guys? LOL, lol. I find little enjoyment from Ducky and Bunny, and Dooku was the only one I kinda like. All of them just feel like side characters that got promoted to being mains. Referring once again back to Toy Story 3, The reason the side characters work so well in that movie is because they don't take anything away from the characters people actually come to see the movie for. They don't try and be anything bigger than what they are, which is fine, but are still entertaining nonetheless. However, in Toy Story 4, they take these half-baked characters and replace the old ones with them, even though they could have been more useful than ever before. For example, when they're in the antique shop, they could have used Slinky to get across the cabinet, or Bullseye to make a swift exit. It's not much, but it's already 10 times more than what they already do. Oh wait, my bad, Jessie actually does do something, and that's to burst the tire of the caravan using a needle. Fuck's sake.
I just can't do it. I can't take this shit no more, man.
The characters not doing much throughout the movie hinders the ending also. I won't lie and say I didn't choke up when I first saw it, especially the final hug. Although in retrospect, it's hard to get emotional when they barely interact with Woody. I do recognise they had much bigger roles in the previous movies, so there may be some emotion there, but you shouldn't have to outsource to get a pull in your heartstrings ending. I wouldn't even be surprised if the emotional ending was half the reason Buzz tags along, because he could have not been in it and would have been played out the same. I don't even hate the ending, but once again, referring back to Toy Story 3, it's a journey all the toys went through. They all went to Sunnyside, and all were willing to accept their fate in the pit of fire. It's something they all went through, which makes the ending more effective and a more satisfying conclusion. Yet in Toy Story 4, it falls flat because it's pretty much the only time they directly do anything with Woody. Believe it or not, there are actually things I do like about this movie. For example, I don't hate the villain, Gabby Gabby. I would say she was handled pretty well, and her motive is decent. Although calling her a villain would be putting her into the same category as Lotso, and I don't think anyone can top that fucker. However, they go for a more sympathetic villain, which I'm not opposed to. In short, she gets rejected by the kid she wanted to be with, but with Woody's help manages to end up with one anyway. It's kind of sweet, so it gets a pass from me. Side note, that scene when she's talking to Woody and rips his voice box out was really well done. Plus, it's worth noting they really knocked it out of the park with the animation. It is breathtaking. The lighting in particular is stunning, and I believe only Soul has topped it, so credit where it's due. Lastly, I'll discuss the writing, and I don't think it's half bad. Some of the jokes got a good chuckle out of me, but I think this is my favourite.
This is the fastest way to the carousel. You made the last jump.
Yeah, but that was 4 feet. This is 40.
Exactly. Duke Kaboom would never repeat a stunt.
No, he'd never do that.
No. He's the toy that went on to crash 40 feet into that target.
Yeah, he is. I'm Duke Kaboom. Oh, man. I can do this.
Yes, you can,
I
Doc.
can do it with my eyes closed.
Yes, you. What?
3, 2, 1, go!
What is he doing? Oh no.
This is for you, Richard. Kaboom.
Overall, it's decent, but as mentioned previously, some gags go on for way too long, and certain character traits are questionable at best. In conclusion, the movie is fine. Despite my fanboyism, I'm able to look at it and say that it's a good movie. The pacing is alright, the story is interesting enough, and it's quite humorous. I can safely say I overreacted all those years ago, and was simply whining because God forbid anyone look at anything objectively. Looking into the development, it's easy to see where things went south. Apparently production began right after Toy Story 3, and John Lasseter was set to direct it with Pete Docter, Andrew Stanton, and Lee Unkrich providing input in the film treatment. Lasseter explains that the reason Pixar wants to do a sequel is because of their pure passion for the series. Lasseter said that Pixar never even talked about doing another Toy Story film, but when Andrew, Pete, Lee and I came up with this new idea, I knew we had to make this movie, and I wanted to direct it myself. If you're raising your eyebrow at this information, then don't worry. Lasseter stressed that we do not do any sequel because we want to print money. Things are going smoothly with Inside Out director Josh Cooley joining to co-direct the film. In 2017, Lasseter announced that Cooley would be the sole director of the film, and subsequently left the project. This is just speculation, but I imagine Disney wanted to give him the boot because of the sexual misconduct allegations that were starting to arise around this time. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know why that was a good call. Cooley reportedly overhauled the movie, and maybe it's just me, but I feel like having someone from the original Toy Story movies to co-direct would have been a good idea to achieve a good balance between the old and new. To finish off, you may be wondering, why would anyone watch this movie? It doesn't seem like anything that amazing, and you'd be correct. It's not. However, this movie has a factor at play that would automatically make it a guaranteed hit, And that factor is nostalgia. The kids watching Toy Story 4 and like it will get nostalgic for it, and then that's when they'll make another Toy Story movie, in which the cycle will repeat over and over as Disney has us locked up in hamster wheels, banking on our nostalgia.